Well, go ahead and be seated. Find your way with me to the book of Exodus chapter 14. Today I'm going to talk to you about letting God fight for you. The Hebrew children have left Egypt and they're stranded in a hard spot, a difficult spot. The Pharaoh is chasing them, and of course they're between the sea and the Pharaoh. Their initial response is to give up and to give in. And they could have fought back as well. They could have turned and they could have probably fought the Pharaoh, and they could have probably turned and maybe ran in a different direction. And here they're realizing that God is about to fight for them. So Exodus chapter 14, beginning in verse 10, when the Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them. They feared greatly. The people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done this to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Is it not this what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to have served the Egyptians than die in the wilderness." Moses said to the people, "Fear not, stand firm. See the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians who you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You have only to be silent." The Lord will fight for you. You have only to be silent. And so, again, they're placed in a situation where they don't know the outcome. They don't know what's going to happen. They are at the point where they're against the Red Sea and the Pharaoh's armies are charging in. And understandably, they're afraid. They're fearful of what's going to happen. And the call of Moses is stand firm, stand secure. God is about to fight for you. God is about to fight on your behalf. Every school, probably every middle school as well as every high school across America and across the world as well, probably has someone who is a bully. You may think back on your years in high school or your years in middle school, and you may remember that bully by their name. I don't know, looking around at you, you may remember the bully by their name. If you don't remember their name, you may have been the bully. I don't know, you could probably consider that as well. But there was a bully when I was in middle school. I was probably in the 5th or the 6th grade. The bully's name was Mike, and he was the stereotypical bully. He wore chains to make himself look tougher. I don't know why chains make themselves. Seems like it would weigh you down in a fight. But the chains, he thought they made him look tougher, and Mike was just the stereotypical bully. My older brother Jonathan went to the same school that I went to, and he was several grades older than me. Mike was in my grade, and so many times I spent time around my older brother Jonathan, and he had a friend by the name of Chris, and Chris was probably the toughest kid in the entire school. I know that surprised you because I went to that school, but Chris was probably the toughest kid in the entire school. And you're thinking to yourself as well, why would Lucas even be afraid of a bully? And it may not like dawn on you right now. I know that you see, these muscles now and this great physique and everything else, and you're thinking to yourself, why would I even be afraid of a bully? But you look back and it may not have been quite like then at that point. So Mike was the bully. And he was a stereotypical bully. And I remember one day, we had a similar bus stop. And so I would get off the bus, and Mike would get off the bus about the same point I got off. And then my brother would, and Chris lived several houses down. And I remember Mike saying to me, "One day when your brother isn't there, I'm going to squash you." Now that's a good term, isn't it? I'm going to squash you. When your brother isn't there, when Jonathan isn't at school, I'm going to squash you. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like a good squashing, and that doesn't sound like a good thing. But he said, "I'm going to squash you when your brother isn't there." So one day Jonathan was sick, and I thought to myself, well, this is it. This is the day. I marked it down on my calendar. This is the day that Lucas is going to get the best squashing of his life, whatever a squashing is. And so the bus was taking us home, and it's like the 3 houses before my house. I'm thinking, here it comes. I'm going to get beat up. Here's the squashing. 2 houses. They're dropping off more kids. Okay, here it comes. Almost to the point to get my squashing. Almost to the point to get beat up. And the next house, my brother, again, he's sick. We're about to get off the bus, and I'm walking off the bus, and Mike is walking off the bus as well. And I look back, and he's grinning from ear to ear. Now, that's somebody who's like ready to give a good squashing, isn't it? He's excited about this. He's grinning from ear to ear, and I think he was like playing with these chains on his pants. And he's just excited about this idea. And so I get off, I look back, Mike looks at me, and he has this big smile on his face. He gets off. And then he looks back, and Chris gets off as well. And Chris steps down, and Mike looks at him, and Chris says, I just thought I might get off the bus here to see if anybody would like to fight. And at that point, Mike looks at Chris, and Mike looks at me, and it looks like he skipped the rest of the way back to his house because he was afraid that Chris was about to take him out and maybe give him a squashing as well. Well, that's an example of my brother's friend Chris. He was ready to fight for me. I don't know why. I don't know why he was about to fight for me, but he was ready to fight for me. He was ready to stand in my place and to fight for me. And Exodus 14 is saying this: God is ready to fight for you. Now, you may feel like right now in your life that you're getting a really good squashing. I don't know if that's a word or not, but it sounds great, doesn't it? You're not going to remember anything else from this sermon except that you heard the word squashing a lot. But you may think to yourself, in life right now, you're getting a good squashing. And that squashing may be from your career, it may be from your work, it may be from your family, it may be from friends, it may be from finances. But whatever it may be, you think that you're ready to be squashed. And you need to hear Exodus chapter 14, Verse 14, the Lord will fight for you. You only have to be silent. God is ready to fight for you. And I don't know how many times you feel like you're in a fight. There are fights that we have in life. Many times we come to church, we're silent, we look happy, we look fulfilled, we look like we have our act together. And what you don't know is all the fights that the person sitting next to you faced the previous week. Those fights may have been fights from depression, fights from fear about the future. Those fights may be fights, again, about wondering how they're just going to make the payment for their rent, or make the payment for their normal, typical bills, or maybe make the payment for food. Other fights may be with worry or with anxiety. Other people in this room are probably fighting for their life. They're fighting because the doctor doesn't know exactly what illness they may have, or they don't know exactly if they're receiving the treatment that they need to receive. But all things are common in this room. The thing that is common in this room is this: we're all in a fight. We're in a battle. Sometimes that battle is physical. Other times that battle is just spiritual. It's a fight to walk with God. It's a fight to stay on the course that God has called us to be on. It's a fight to press forward. It's a fight in general just to typically follow the pattern of Jesus' lifestyle. I mean, how easy is it to remain calm and to be forgiving? That's a struggle, and that's a fight. You have a struggle and you have a fight just to be forgiving, because there are people that you don't like, right? I mean, there are people you just don't like. Now, all of you are looking at me right now, and I don't know, that makes me a little bit worried, but there are people that you just don't like, and it's a fight to deal with them. It's a fight to forgive. It's a fight to be kind. It's a fight to be gracious. And this is saying that God is ready to fight for you. Now, what does that mean? What if the Lord were to fight our battles? And on the flip side of that, what if you were to only be silent? See what he says? The Lord will fight for you. You have only to be silent. Stop what you're doing, he says. Take a breath, calm down, and be silent. Silence is hard when you hear a lot of yelling. Silence is hard when you're trapped between the Pharaoh and the Red Sea. Silence is hard when life feels like the clashing of thunder or the rolling of the sea. He says, stop for one moment, just calm down. And all you have to do is be silent. Now, they probably wanted to shout in fear. They probably wanted to run in every direction, but he says, calm down for a moment, just be silent. I grew up watching some older television shows as well as movies from the 70s and 80s. You may have seen many of these, but if you look at the typical movie like The Goonies or even the Sandlot movie or many of those type of movies, they have the same typical characters. It's the same typical characters that they have on Scooby-Doo and they have on every other TV show you ever watch. You have typical characters. You have the leader, the person who says, he's in charge or she's in charge, and they're going to decide what's going to be determined, and they're going to decide what to do in the movie or in the television show. So you have the leader, the bold, strong leader. And then you probably have someone on the crew who's very smart and who's very intelligent. Now it's the person who's very technologically savvy. And so you have the intelligent person who's also a part of this group. So you have a leader, you have an intelligent person, and then you may have like the comedian on the group, someone who's always cracking jokes and who's always the wise person and who may tend to be a little bit sarcastic. And so there's three different characters that you have on the typical sitcom or on the typical movie as well. You have a leader, you have a really smart person, and you have a comedian. And then there's always this fourth person, and the fourth person is the coward, right? The fourth person is like Shaggy on Scooby-Doo. It's like the coward who always runs in the other direction. And the coward is the person, you've seen these type of stereotypical movies before, no matter the situation, they say, we're all going to die, right? I mean, we're all going to die. The enemy could be closing in. We're all going to die. They may be about to eat dinner and it's something they don't want. We're all going to die. They may be about to head to a sports event, and they may not be very good at sport. We're all going to die. But that's the stereotypical character in these type of sitcoms and these type of television shows as well. There's this person who says, regardless of what's going to happen, we're just all going to die. I mean, that's what's going to be the result of this situation. Well, Moses is the leader, and there's not really a comedian or an intelligent person. There's a crowd, and the crowd's all the cowards. And they're saying, guess what, Moses? You let us out here. We're all going to die. And you may be thinking in your life right now, and that looks like you. You look at the future, and it's easy to look at the future and be afraid. It's easy to look at the future and be worried. It's easy to look at the future and be anxious. It's easy to live by the statement, we're all going to die. We're all going to fail. We're not going to succeed. We're not going to win. We're not going to move forward. We're not going to get ahead. And so Moses says to them, why don't you just stand still and be quiet? Why don't you just stand still and stop talking? Stop forecasting the rain when God is about to bring the sunshine. Stop predicting the future when God is the one who is writing the future. They're causing a lot of noise. And there are people in your life, and sometimes we ourselves, we're good at causing a lot of noise. They're causing a lot of noise, and causing noise is doubting. Being silent is trusting. Causing noise is fretting. Being silent in this text is resting. Moses is saying that if you can't speak words of faith, stop talking. If you're unable to speak words of faith over the lives of others or over the situation, stop speaking. If you're unable to speak words of faith in the life of your children, stop speaking. Just be silent. Another translation, if you have an older translation, it says in verse 14, you shall hold your peace. You shall hold your peace. Let God fight for you. God is about to fight for you. You shall hold your peace. That's an interesting term, isn't it? Holding their peace. That means remaining a person of peace, but there's something unique about saying you should hold your peace. Why? Because we like to say our peace, don't we? We like to speak our peace or have our peace. He said, you shall hold your peace. Don't say anything. Stop talking about the situation. God is about to show up in a real way. God is about to show up in a tangible way. One of the greatest miracles in all history, Moses is saying, is about to occur. God is about to part the seas. I don't even know at this point if Moses understood exactly what God was going to do. What would you do in that situation? You don't know exactly what God is going to do. The Pharaoh's on one side, the Red Sea's on the other side. Let's say, well, we can be in that situation. Let's say you've never seen the Red Sea part before. We're on the other side of the situation. Moses hadn't saw the Red Sea part. I mean, he could have looked back on miracles before and thought to himself, well, maybe I need to get to building an ark. And we're going to travel over this Red Sea in an ark. I don't know what's going to happen. Moses may not have known what was going to happen. The Hebrew children absolutely did not know what was going to happen. And they didn't believe that anything was going to happen. And so Moses says, just hold on. Be silent. Stop talking. God is about to fight your battle. Psalm 46 is a beautiful psalm. It says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth be removed, though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, Though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof, there is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early. The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice. The earth melted. God uttered his voice. The earth melted. You see the picture here? The sea may be moved. The waves may come in. The kingdoms may look like they are shaken. But who is the one who can shake the kingdoms? Who is the one who can move the sea? Who is the one who can roar like the lion in the jungle? It is God who is the one who shakes the sea. The Lord of hosts is with us, verse 7. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Come, behold the works of the Lord, what desolations he hath made the earth. He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaketh the bow. He cutteth the spear in sunder. He burneth the chariot in the fire. Be still and know that I am God. God is doing a lot in that passage, isn't he? God is moving. God is active. God is working. God is causing war to cease, which is a beautiful picture. God is causing people who were at war to beat their spears into the ground. God is causing the seas to roar and the mountains to melt. He's causing all the kingdoms and all the governments of the world to be shaken. And God is moving and God is fighting, God is working. And he says, this is what you should do for one moment. You should be still. Be still. And know that I am God. That's hard, isn't it? Being still. I'm not a still person. I don't know if you've seen me before. I don't stand still. I don't sit still. I don't talk still or think still, if that's even something that people do. Are you a still person? Be still and know that I'm God. And instead of being still, we like noise. We like clutter. This is why we're so consumed with being busy, because if it ever gets to the point in life where we're not busy or we're not consumed with a project or a thought or an idea, if we're not consumed with something, then we have to actually deal with the person that we are. We have to deal with the person that we've become. Or we have to deal with the person that we're going to be. Or we have to deal with all the anxieties and worries that surround our life. So he says, be still. God is saying, maybe you need to stop for one moment and quit focusing on the events around you and start focusing on who you are, on what you are thinking, on how you're acting. Be still and know that I'm God. Because God isn't the one who's going to change. I mean, God isn't the one who's going to be different, and God isn't the one who is going to be moved either. And so he says, be still. And silence, again, it can be a very scary situation. It says, if you want God to fight for you, face the enemy in this manner, letting the Lord fight for you. It means being still. It means you stop trying to make things work your way. We're good at that. Verse 13, Moses said to the people, fear not. Stand firm, see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians who you see today, you'll see them never again. The Lord will fight for you. You have only to be silent. Moses reminds them, you're going to see something today that you've never seen before. You're going to see the Lord work. You're going to see the seas part. And each of the Hebrew children, they were probably trying to take control of the situation. They probably took Moses to the side and said, hey, Moses, I have a really good idea about how to get out of this situation. What if we build a ladder and we crawl up on the side of the mountain? We can hide from the Egyptians. Moses, what if we dig a tunnel? We're going to dig a tunnel all the way under the Red Sea, and maybe we would be okay. There's probably some guy who said, Moses, why don't we hide in those bushes and try to escape the Egyptians? Moses, why don't we give in and say to the Egyptians, we do love you guys. We care for you guys. We're just playing a little joke. We just wanted to see how far you would take it. We're good now. We'll go back. We'll be your slaves. They probably had an idea about what they could have done. And sometimes we have an idea about what we should do as well. I mean, we want to fight. We're ready to fight. There's a fight in us. And so we take charge, we consume ourselves with taking charge, and we move ahead, and we're in control. And sometimes we notice that when we take charge of a situation, we're one step closer to losing the battle, not winning. And if the Israelites had taken control of the situation, they would have been one step closer to losing the battle and not winning the battle. And so Moses says to them instead, stop trying to take control. Just stand still. God is going to show up in this situation. And some of you are thinking, I'm going to throw in the towel. I mean, you're thinking to yourself that you followed the plans of God and the plans of God haven't worked out. You've stacked up a situation and you've looked at all the odds, you've seen all the circumstances, and you have to take control and you have to act now. God's not going to be the one who's going to take control, and God isn't going to be the one who is going to act either. The situation that's occurring here in Exodus 14 is this. God is the one who's going to get the victory. You understand that? The Hebrew children weren't going to get credit for this victory. They had been whining the entire time. And there are points in our lives where God has to get us where we say, if there's going to be victory in this situation, it's going to come from God. I'm not going to be the one who can change the situation. I'm not going to be the one who can muster it up. I'm not going to be the one who can divert it. If there's going to be victory to occur, it has to be from God. For many years, I witnessed to a friend of mine named Joey. And Joey would always bring up why he was not a believer in Christ. So I would talk to him about Christ, and he would say, well, I would believe in God, but why would a good God allow all these bad things to happen? Look at the bad things in the world, all the evil in the world. I would say, well, I think you have to consider a couple of things. Adam and Eve fell into sin, and evil occurs because there are evil people in the world. Well, why are there people who have no food, no resources? Well, a lot of the reason, I would say to Joey, that people don't have food and resources is because there are oppressive governments. And there are greedy people as well who don't want to share food and those type of events. Well, if God loves us, then why would these type of events occur? Well, if God knows the future, why did he allow the future to look like this? And on and on and on. Joey would have these questions, and I would answer all of those questions to the best of my ability, to the best of my understanding of Scripture, and I would tell him this is what I think, and you know what happened? The questions never ended, and it was question after question, and it became argument after argument after argument, or discussion after discussion, not so much just arguing in a negative way, but discussing the situation. Well, I didn't see Joey for a little bit, and a year or so passed, and I saw him again, and I asked him how he was doing, and we started to talk about faith and religion again, and I had grown in my faith and my trust in the Lord, and he said to me, well, I would believe in God. But what about somebody on the island who never even hears about God? I remember I looked at him and I said, why don't you take it up with God? Why don't you take it up with God? I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to answer any more of your questions. I'm not going to talk to you about any more theological discussions or any more nuances of this stuff. Your fight isn't with me. Your fight's with God. You take it up with God. Discuss it with the Lord. Ask God to show you something, because what I'm showing you isn't working. And there are people in your family right now, you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm showing them all this stuff and it's not working. Well, their fight isn't with you, it's with the Lord. Or there's friends that you have and you talk to them for years about Jesus, and you're thinking to yourself, they don't want to hear about Jesus. It's not working. All the great theological arguments, they're not working. You know why? Because they don't work. You know, you've heard this before, how you win an argument. You don't. You don't win arguments. You don't win fights. There's no way to win a fight. There's no way to win an argument. But God always wins. And God always is in control. So let them take it up with God. I would say if you're in that situation right now, you take it up with God. You take it up with him. Well, several more years passed, and I lost contact with Joey. And then I came back in contact with him. And religion came up again. And he said, you know what, Lucas? He said, you need to know this. He said, I gave my life to the Lord. I trusted the Lord. And he said, God won the battle. God won the battle. And I told him, I said, you go, you fight God. Take it up with him. He said, God won the battle. I don't have all my questions answered. I don't understand all the situations. I don't get all the circumstances, but I know this. God won the battle. God's the one who's in charge. God is the one who has created all life, and he's the one who is in control of all of life as well. And Moses is saying, you just stand still. You don't need to go up to Pharaoh and say, hey, Pharaoh, let me give you 10 reasons why you need to let us go. Hey, Pharaoh, let me give you 5 reasons why you should help us across the Red Sea. You know what's going to happen to Pharaoh? You're going to help us across the Red Sea. Why don't you just build us a bridge or let us go around the Red Sea? And one day we're going to be growing crops, and we're going to export those crops from the Promised Land, and you're going to be the happiest person in Egypt. And they didn't try to reason with Pharaoh. Moses didn't try to reason with the situation. He said, stand still, quit talking, and know that God is about to do something. That's a good message. Stand still. Stop talking. Know that God is about to do something in your life. The Lord will fight for you. I mean, how massive is that statement? God will fight for you. Does anybody ever fight for anybody else? I guess Chris was ready to fight for me. If he had got punched, I don't know if he would have been ready to fight for me anymore. But is anybody really ready to fight for us? I mean, friends turn and run away. People abandon you. People disappoint you. One of the ways that you're going to be happier in life is you should expect people to disappoint you. Nobody's going to live up to your expectations. Nobody's going to live up to my expectations. And so we expect disappointment. We expect frustrations. We expect people not to have our corner when we think that they're going to have our corner. But God says he's fighting for you. He's fighting for you. God is with you. God is fighting on your behalf. God is fighting beside you. And that's a great picture. God is fighting for you. What are your battles? I mean, what right now are your battles in life? God is fighting for you. Right, 7-year-old Knox, he had his first football game yesterday. Got to see him, and he had 2 games, and he's geared out. He's a stockier boy, and he's geared out in the football outfit. I mean, he looks like a little massive football player. He looks tough. I mean, he looks like I would have been afraid of him if I had been in his grade. I think he might have beat me up. So he's decked out and his football gear, and I'm sitting here and I'm watching him from the bleachers play football as well. And it was hot yesterday, and the kids were all tired, and Knox, he was a defensive lineman. He's sort of leaning down, and he's just a little bit too tired. And at one point, he fell back, and he kind of sat down, and he was waiting on them to hike the ball, and he's kind of sitting there. And the coach screamed at him, and he said, "Knox, get off your behind!" It wasn't exactly those words, but it wasn't as bad of a word as you think it might be. But he said, "Knox, get off your behind! Quit sitting down! Stand up! Do something." That's what he's saying. I'm sitting there picturing this. This is the call to the Exodus. Stand up. Don't act like you're defeated. Don't act like you're about to lose. God is about to close in. Get off your behinds and know that God is the one who's about to bring the victory. And this is a different situation as well. Imagine if you were the one running the football. You catch the ball, and you're on the way. And imagine, if you have a good team, they would try to block you and keep other people from tackling you. And so imagine running that play, and you have people around you blocking you and keeping them from tackling you as well. And God is saying in this passage, you just stand still. You just take a little walk forward. Picture that. Picture a football player taking a little walk forward. And people are charging in. And every charge, they're knocked out of the way. They're knocked down. They're thrown down. And you just walk on. Make a touchdown. Just walk on. And Exodus is saying, you just stand there. You just walk forward a little bit. That sea's going to part. The waters aren't going to cave in. The Pharaoh may come your way. I'm going to knock him out of the way. I mean, this is a touchdown. You're ready to win the game. You're going all the way across the sea. And all you have to do is just stand there. You don't have to do anything. Just stand there and know that God is about to fight for you. God is fighting for you. The Lord will fight. It's for you. It's for you. And the Lord is the one who will fight. Deuteronomy chapter 31. This is when Moses is given Joshua a command. And this is when they were going to the promised land as well. Then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him, in the sight of all of Israel, be strong and courageous, for you shall go with this people into the land that the Lord has sworn to their fathers to give them. You shall put them in possession of it. It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. It is the Lord who goes before you. You know, you're going to work tomorrow. You may not like going to work tomorrow. You know who beat you there? The Lord goes before you. You may be going to a family reunion this month. You may not like going to a family reunion. If you do, you're weird. But you may not like going to a family reunion. You know who beat you there? The Lord beat you there to deal with everything you're going to face. You may be going into whatever difficult situation that you're going to face this week. God is the one who goes before you. God is the one who is fighting your battles. God is the one who is ahead of you. And the Lord is the one who is fighting. God will fight. It's amazing. God will fight. God will work. God will be the one in this. There's a speech given by Winston Churchill. It was given in June 4th, 1940, in front of the House of Commons, part of the Parliament of the United Kingdom. The popular title for the speech is "We Shall Fight on the Beaches." You may have heard this speech before. But part of that speech at the very end, this is when the Nazis, they're closing in on France. And this was a very scary situation. Is the United States going to help? They're closing in on France. What's going to happen? And Winston Churchill, he said these words. He said, "We shall go to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and the oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And even if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until, in God's good time, the New World, the Americans, with all of its power and might, steps forth to rescue and the liberation of the old. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the sea, and the land and the air." Winston Churchill says, no matter where the battle is closing in, we're going to fight. That's what God is saying to you. It doesn't matter where the battle is closing in on your life. It doesn't matter what the situation looks like, what injustice or what difficulty or what circumstance is about to close in on you. God says He is fighting for you. And He is fighting for you so much that He sent Christ. And Christ fought the greatest enemy in the entire world, which is death. The Bible says that Jesus went all the way to the cross. He fought death, He was buried, and He was resurrected the third day. And He won. And now, God fights for you. Would you stand with me?